In this video, I'm going to share with you why reading is the closest thing you can have to a real superpower. I'm talking Spider-Man, Hulk type shit, and why this is so important in the age of AI. Those who don't read are going to get left behind, and those who do read and use AI will inherit the earth. So we are reaching a tipping point, a point of no return, a catalyst point in a chemical reaction, or however you might call it. Now, you might have heard of this movie called Idiocracy. And a lot of people think that's a fiction, that's a fictional movie, but it's actually a documentary. Our world is starting to resemble that in Idiocracy. And for those that haven't watched it, in the future, there's a bunch of really dumb people that populate Earth, and Earth goes to shit. That's what's happening now with our shortened attention spans, thanks to short form content, IG Reels, TikTok videos, AI summaries. People are getting dumber and dumber. But at the same time, a certain class of people are getting smarter and smarter through leveraging AI, through doing the hard things. And they always make movies like Idiocracy, The Matrix that seem like fictions, but a lot of times they depict what's happening in reality. So it's important to pay attention to those movies. Now, I was doing a little bit of research and I looked into this World Inequality database, kind of research that they did in 2023. And I was really stunned. Well, not really, because I understand the 80-20 rule and how the Pareto distribution occurs in the world. Basically, the global world is distributed in such an uneven way where the top 10% of the people in the world own 76% of the wealth, while the bottom 50% only have 2%. So there's a huge asymmetry in terms of the haves and the have-nots. The vast majority of the world, billions of people, don't even have $10,000 to their name. And in the age of AI, things are only going to get worse. Distribution is going to get skewed. I predict it will be something like this. The top 10% of the world will own 95% of all the shit, everything we have. And the bottom 90% will own 5%, right? So the vast majority of people will be eating bugs and happy with their Netflix subscription, owning nothing and being happy. I think it's a trademark that's been going around. So AI is going to help this happen because it's going to create extreme leverage, like a ridiculous amount of leverage that people have never seen before. And some people are going to get rich AF from it, while complacent people are going to become even bigger slaves, are going to be even more in the rat race, more unplugged. Now, what is leverage? Leverage is just a multiplier of efforts. That's all leverage is. The internet became a form of a leverage for a lot of people. And we saw in the turning of the millennium, all these tech companies were popping up, these internet companies, and people were excited. That was one form of leverage. Now we're entering another area of leverage with AI that is probably just going to be potentially even more substantial than the internet was between 1999 and 2010, especially if you know how to use it. But in this age of AI, there's some things you have to keep into consideration. And I made a tweet about this. In the age of AI, it's better to be a generalist than a specialist. Understanding several fields of knowledge helps with fractal thinking, which we'll talk about soon. AI can find the nuance. So in the past, we had this model of reality where you'd had to go to school and study and really specialize in one area of field and you become the expert. But we got AI now, you can ask it a question and it will tell you what's up. So specialization to a high degree is not going to be as important as being a generalist, having a huge surface area of things you know about. Because when you have a bigger surface area of different fields that you know about, you can then use AI to create something special, or you can then use AI to kind of connect the dots and see things that other people don't see. So this is the game we're moving towards, where it's better to know more than just really be deep on one field. And a lot of the geniuses of our time really abided by this philosophy. They were these Renaissance men, these generalists. People like Isaac Newton. A lot of people think that Isaac Newton was just some math geek or some physics geek doing his Principia Mathematica, or whatever it's called, and figuring out graph. This guy was a generalist, really. He was really damn good at physics and really damn good at math, but he was also interested in things such as alchemy. right? He actually had his own translation of Hermes Trismegistus's Emerald Tablet. So he was with the shits, but we're not gonna go down that rabbit hole because YouTube might just break. Leonardo da Vinci was also a Renaissance man, interested in lots of different things, sculptures, art, and uh, he was even looking at the anatomy of birds. And Walter Isaacson's got a good biography on that. If you want to read it, this guy was just interested in whatever. Smart people are addicted to reading. They're addicted to reading because it increases their surface area. And if you research any smart person, you will see that all they do is read books and apply what they learn. So one of my favorite thinkers is Charlie Munger, who founded Berkshire Hathaway with Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett and him were the two partners in that, and this big, crazy, hyper successful company, right? That you could have, they always say if you put $1 in Berkshire Hathaway, 1960, it will be 100 million today. They always have these stats. I don't know the exact stats, but they're pretty smart individuals. And this is what he said: in my whole life, I have known no wise person over a broad subject matter area who didn't read all the time. None. Zero. You'd be amazed at how much Warren reads and how much I read. My children laugh at me. They think I'm a book with a couple of legs sticking out. Charlie Munger, right? So his kids are saying, Dad, you're a freaking book with legs. This is how much you read. And this is the level you need to get to. You need to be you need to make Charlie ashamed, right? You need to be reading all the time. Another great thinker, Bruce Lee, he said, a book isn't just a book. It can capture and expand your mind, change your life, and guide your spirit. What many people don't know is that Bruce Lee actually had a library of something like 2,000 books. His daughter actually shared some of those books in a YouTube video. And I made a video about that too. And this guy was interested in everything: ballet, art, philosophy, poetry, religion, spirituality. He was everywhere. His surface area was incredible.
In philosophy section called Crisis in Consciousness, The Battle Within the Mind by Robert Powell. In this book, you can see he signed it. Property of Bruce Lee with the Lung signature underneath. The Importance of Right Beginning is the name of this section, and here he's written some notes. The beginning. Number 1, do not cling to partiality, however fantastic. See things from totality.
And that's part of the reason he became one of the greats, right? Because he wasn't just some, dumb martial artist. He was a true philosopher, probably more interested in philosophy than martial arts. Malcolm X said, people don't realize how a man's whole life can be changed by one book. And Malcolm X is someone who learned to read and write inside prison, which helped him kind of figure out his views and do what he did during that time when it was very difficult for people like him. So a little backstory about me. I've been reading heavily since 2014, and I gotta give a shout out to a few people. My dad got me into reading because he was a big reader. And also Owen Cook from RSD had a video years ago talking about the truth of success, and he said something about reading then that kind of just got me onto it. So 600 books since then, probably even more because I don't finish most of the books that I start. I'll talk about that a little bit later. And in that time, I've read on psychology, sales, marketing, project management, self-improvement, technology, engineering, religion, spirituality, and the occult, finance, conspiracy theories, biographies, anthropology, nutrition, philosophy, microeconomics, physics, mathematics, chemistry. Those last 3 hard sciences were mostly during my engineering studies degree. I dropped out, by the way. Currently working on literature, history, biology, economics. Those are the things I haven't really read too much about. And I'm showing you this to kind of give you some ideas on different areas you can look into, right? This isn't about bragging because there's lots of people that read and do nothing. This is about opening your mind to the possibilities and how reading really changes the way you see the world, the way you present yourself to the world, and the way you discern ideas, which takes you out of the subconscious state. So the subconscious state is something that's very, very important to understand. And I really started thinking about this deeply when I was reading Nikola Tesla's autobiography. And I'm really surprised with how many people don't study Nikola Tesla. This guy was a genius, like a complete genius, helped paved the way for many of the technologies we have today. If it wasn't for him, we would still be doing like DC current and stuff, AC. He was a revolutionary thinker, and he was really into the spiritual dimension of things, which is something a lot of people don't know, or they try kind of cover up about him, but he was really about the spiritual side of things and diving deep into that. And he said this in his autobiography. He said, "Soon I became aware, to my surprise, that every thought I conceived was suggested by an external impression. In the course of time, it became perfectly evident to me that I was merely an automaton endowed with power of movement, responding to stimuli of the sense organs and thinking and acting accordingly." He basically learned that he was a puppet, and he put a campaign on against himself to stop being a puppet, to stop being a slave to external circumstances, to residing in the subconscious state. What you have to understand is there are two primary states, and it's not a distinct black and white thing. It's on a spectrum. And this graph here, or this diagram here, really helps you understand that. There's a subconscious state, which encompasses most of your mind, the subconscious mind here represented in this dark area. And there's the conscious mind, which is the, on top of the pyramid, maybe climbing Jacob's ladder. It's right at the top here. Conscious mind is a gift from God, right? Most the animals and most the people in the world are actually in the subconscious state reacting. And the subconscious mind is very powerful. You might have had that experience where you had to drive an hour and a half from A to B, and you were thinking and daydreaming, maybe having a conversation, maybe listening to a podcast. And then you arrive home, you're like, oh, how did I get here so quickly? Thank God for your subconscious. It was taking care of you. Because if you had to compute every little detail of the driving, you'd be very overwhelmed and you wouldn't be able to enjoy much of life. So the subconscious state is the automatic part of the mind that's taking care of you. And it's taking care of a lot of stuff, your bodily functions, the unconscious mind, your, inner fears, all these things that you don't really think about. As I mentioned before, most animals are in the subconscious state. Look at this cute little dog here. All right, dogs are cute. They definitely have personalities. Different dogs have different personalities, and anyone who owns a dog or a pet will understand that. But for the most part, a lot of their behaviors are kind of predictable, are kind of the same. If you put a dog behind, a fence, most dogs, and you have like someone walk past that they don't know, they'll probably bark at that person. Why? Because they're in that subconscious state. They're running off animal instincts. They can't really do otherwise, right? And as you climb up in terms of intelligence of different animals, you start noticing that certain animals have more awareness and start becoming less and less able to be controlled, a bit more unpredictable. Take orcas, which are like one of my favorite animals, killer whales. They're awesome. And lately they've been sinking boats. So a bunch of orcas have been teaming up in pods and biting the rudders of boats and they figured out how to sink these boats, and they've just been.
This frightening video shows a pod of orcas attacking a tourist sailboat off Portugal. The so-called killer whales repeatedly ramming the vessel, eventually sinking it. Several people had to be rescued. Later that day, the same pod reportedly attacking another boat.
Oh my God!
It's the latest in a series of aggressive acts by orcas, which can grow as long as 30 feet and weigh up to 6 tons.
Sinking them left, right, and center. They're sick and tired of people messing with the shit in the ocean. This is unpredictable. People never thought this could happen. This is not part of their typical behavior because they have a higher level of awareness. They have huger brains, dolphins and orcas and whales, which allows them to do these things that sometimes are a bit unpredictable, these behaviors that we can't always pinpoint. You hear stories of dolphins saving humans sometimes, which is crazy. And supposedly at the highest level in this hierarchy of animals, at the top of the food chain, there's meant to be man, once again gifted with the conscious mind by God to be able to have free will and the ability to create reality, to rule over earth. This is in a lot of spiritual texts, even in the Bible. We have this power to transform things through our conscious mind. We can think of something, conceive an idea, and then materialize in the physical world, which is something that's very difficult for animals to do. But this is only if you are aware. Most people, unfortunately, are not aware. And you can see the discrepancy between humankind is almost the same as between, a dog and the orca. There's such a huge spectrum of humans, some that are movers that can really influence the way economies go down. At the highest level, maybe a president can make a particular action and change the economy. to someone who can't even, wipe their ass, like who who doesn't know where to get the next meal and is really struggling. So the range is so vast for humans that it's not even funny. And I remember watching this documentary on Netflix called Wild Wild Country. It's about this spiritual guru from India who's called Bhagwan or Osho. And what was crazy about this documentary is this guy was meant to be enlightened and super spiritual, but thousands of people came from across the world to see him, this holy man, and kind of listen to him. This was before the internet, and they were ready to fight for him to the death with like guns and stuff, which is a little bit weird. But apparently, it's because he was at such a high vibration, high conscious level, conscious of that conscious state, where people came to him like moths. And this is what's happened a lot of times in history. There's all these figures that come up, sometimes referred to as avatars, and they tend to be very conscious individuals. And the more conscious you are, the more you kind of pull people towards your gravity, the more sway you have in life. A good book to read on this is Tufti the Priestess by Vadim Zeland. He's the author of the book Reality Transurfing, which has been gaining traction in recent years. So here's the thing. Reading, through giving you different inputs, allows you to wake up. It activates your brain in different regions, helping you stay in that conscious state. It gives you different perspectives, stops you from being pulled by outer conditions, the stuff that Nikola Tesla warned us about. Stops you being pulled by mainstream conditioning, by brainwashing, by psychological influences, because you have different data points, reference points that you can go to from the books that you've read, from your lived experience, that contradict some of the things that I guess the mainstream view will give you. A lot of people that don't read, their only path in life is through consensus thinking, through the consensus agreements of society. What everyone else says is true is all they can go from, because they don't have any other way of getting other information. And this is getting worse with AI summaries. This is getting worse with shortening of attention spans. So it's so important to read. It's a superpower. And it's a superpower because it unlocks the adjacent, possible, and emergence. And we're going to get real deep here because this is very important to understand. You see, the adjacent possible is a popular concept, right? I forgot who coined it, but it's very popular. And it basically describes how new technologies and opportunities emerge. The idea suggests that advances in technology are path dependent, which is a fancy way of saying that they have to happen in a particular sequence. To give you an example, do you remember when we used to have brick phones? I remember playing on my parents' phones, the old Nokias, and all you could do back then was play snakes, change the ringtone, and send a text message with maybe 30 characters. That's all that you could do. All right, it was very different to the phones that we have today. And these days, you have iPhones where you can run multi-million-dollar businesses, where you can reach millions of people on apps like TikTok, etc. So it's a completely different thing. It might as well be called something different. It's not even the phone anymore. So look at this graph here, or this diagram. Brick phone, just calls and SMS. Then someone added the camera. Someone added basic internet. Someone added email. Someone added a music player. And boom, that's your iPhone. It was a quantum leap in that technology. But I needed all these things to be added first for this to happen. And then once you had the iPhone and smartphones, you then all of a sudden had app stores, applications, little programs on the phone. And once you have the applications, you then all of a sudden have social media platforms that can go on that. And then, it just gets crazy. Then you become, you reach a state where we're in now. So here is the thing. How does this relate to reading? Okay, I want you to imagine this. Consider each book like a block of technology that was previously locked to you. Some books are substantial upgrades. Some books are crazy, like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. That might revolutionize your life. That might change your life, as Malcolm X said. Some books are small updates. Those iPhone updates that people get, and it just changes the font or the color of the app. It doesn't really do much. That might be one of the mainstream self-improvement books that you see in front of the bookstores. It might help. It might give you a little tip. But what matters is the lattice of knowledge you gain, the combination of different books, right? They start to build up and build up and build up. And it becomes something really special, right? You unlock the adjacent possible in terms of your ability to think through problems, your ability to come up with ideas, because you have all those fundamental building blocks. When we looked at the technology example, you needed email, you needed cameras, you needed music and all the stuff to have iPhones. But when you were in the stage of the brick phone, you couldn't even imagine an iPhone because certain things didn't exist. You need to go through the path to unlock the iPhone. It's the same thing with reading. The more books you read, you start unlocking this higher version of yourself, right? You start creating paths. Certain books fill out certain gaps other books missed out on. And that's a very powerful thing. And I mentioned before this idea of emergence. Emergence is a term that's used a lot in systems thinking by systems theorists, also used by physicists. It basically is a fancy way of saying that when things just change at different levels, right? So if you study chemistry or physics, you know that the combination of different atoms creates new properties. So you have a hydrogen atom, you have an oxygen atom. They're both gases. We understand what that is. But when they combine together and have H2O, right? They combine together, you get water, which you wouldn't be able to predict that would happen from two gases. How did this happen? Where did this water come from? What the hell is going on here? How does two gases turn into water? It's basically magic. I like to say emergence is magic. Magic we don't understand. When you look at the sky, sometimes you see these birds flying around in these strange patterns. It's been mesmerizing. And that is also emergence. A lot of these birds are not trying to create some kind of cool little, locomotive thing going. They're just following basic rules. They're following basic rules. They're trying to keep a certain distance away from this bird over here. They're trying to follow this other bird over there or whatever. But when you look at it as a whole, it looks insane. It looks like there's a mind controlling this. There's this dynamic behavior that shows. The same thing happens with schools of fish. The same thing happens with the economy. You can study all the game theory you want or the microeconomics. You can study how people behave, psychology on a small scale in terms of their interactions. That's not going to help you understand the economy because the economy is an emergent property of all these little trades and interactions that are happening. It becomes this crazy thing that is really hard to predict. That's why people always are shocked when the market crashes because it's, how are you going to predict this thing that's got a mind of its own, this magic? Sometimes they say they predict it, but a lot of times I believe that's hindsight bias. When you're or the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, when you're trying to create a pattern after the fact, it's very easy to get fooled by data. Nassim Taleb has a book that is really good on that topic called Fooled by Randomness. I also have a video on emergence if you want to understand that at a higher level. So what does emergence have to do with reading? As I said before, each book is a new input. The different inputs, when they're mixed together, you don't know what's going to happen at the higher level. You don't know what thoughts you're going to have. You don't know what's going to get unlocked. One thing is for certain. If you do what everyone else is doing, there's a good chance you're going to have the same result as everyone else. If you do something different, reading through diverse fields, you could very likely become a genius. And when you study a lot of these geniuses, you notice that their paths are not the same. They usually have different things that they're looking into, unique angles that they're investigating. And that's emergence. I said before that fractal thinking is going to become more important in the age of AI. And I got this idea of fractal thinking from a business book called Ready, Fire, Aim, which is actually a really good business book. And the author, Michael Masterson, says this: experience-based intuition is fractal, not linear, and fractal thinking can interpret many more factors than you can possibly calculate on a spreadsheet. We have all the computing power in the world, right? We have spreadsheets, we have AI, we have all these calculation devices, but there is something special about the human mind in terms of recognizing patterns. It almost operates in this fractal way where it can pick up on patterns that happened in the most weird ways. That's why, sometimes when you try to get AI to write something, it doesn't have the creativity of a human being. A human being has creativity because they can draw from a shit ton of lived experiences and draw from the most unlikely places. When you think of the color pink It might remind you of a particular shoe that you bought when you were 3 years old, right? And you might be the only person in the world with that association. So because we all have these unique associations, we can create something amazing. And we have this ability to find patterns and match them up with something else we've seen. That's this idea of fractals. And fractals are everywhere in nature. It's just continuously replicating patterns. If you look at the seashell here, it's the same kind of pattern as this thing over here, following the Fibonacci sequence or the golden ratio. And our Milky Way galaxy does the same thing too. So there's a recurring patterns, and our minds are very good at picking up those things, only when we're awake though. So fractal thinking is quite similar to intuition, but it's not to be mistaken with intuition in my experience. Fractal thinking has to do with the subconscious mind, bringing things up to the conscious mind, right? So based on your lived experience. Intuition a lot of times is a feeling, and sometimes with intuition, or a lot of times, it's something that you have no relation with, no experience to. So it is my theory that it's actually you connecting to higher minds. But that's a conversation for another day. Now let's get on to more practical matters. How can you develop the reading habit? This is what I say. Only read what interests you to build the habit. Don't read books that are boring. Part of the reason some people hate reading is because they were forced to read boring shit in school. And school teaches you that reading is boring, and then you don't read. You need to reverse this, right? You need to invert this. To enjoy reading, read what you like, and that's it. Number 2, try audiobooks, Kindle or physical. Figure out which one you prefer and stick to it. Maybe it's a mix. I love audiobooks. I also love Kindle, and I also like physical. Audiobooks are great for when you're out and about. Kindle is great for note-taking and collecting of different quotes. And physical books are great to kind of really ingrain the lessons in your mind because you're using your fingers, your touch, your smell, or the senses. It's a different type of feel when you're reading a physical book. I hate people that say, oh, audiobooks don't count. Those people are idiots, because the whole point is to get the knowledge. It's not to, have some kind of weird classist or I don't even get, I'm not even going to talk about it. It's so stupid. Number 3, have a dedicated reading time and do it every day, right? I try to read every day, and I've been doing that for the past 10 years. I get really sad if I miss out. Fuck this shit. About an hour and 20 minutes every day, sometimes 2 hours. At one stage I was doing 3 hours, but that was a bit too crazy. You want to make it a habit, so you gotta make it consistent, so you can, it's just easier when it's happening at the same time and it's happening every single day. I get really sad if I can't read on a given day. It's very rare, but it happens sometimes, and it does make me sad. So you want to do it every day. Number 4, if a book is boring, get rid of it. And this kind of goes hand in hand with number 1. Don't waste your time reading boring shit. There's too many books in the world, too many good books. You have a limited time. Don't waste your time on boring books unless there's a reason for you to read it. Get rid of it, right? Like, one of the saddest thoughts I had recently is that I won't be able to read every book that I want in this life, in this lifetime, because there's just not enough time, right? So even though I've read 600 or whatever, I've actually probably read closer to 1,000. And the reason I say that is because most of the books I read, I don't finish. Right? I don't finish. I think that's one of these things on this list here. I don't finish them because of this way of reading. 500 to 600 I've actually tracked. So that's interesting aside. Bin it if it's boring. Number 5, experiment with reading multiple books at once. I got that one from Ty Lopez, and he's in a lot of trouble right now. But yeah, that was a good tip by him. Read multiple books, especially if you're like a dopamine type person like me, who likes novelty. I like to read 10 books at any given time, and that's just my thing. Maybe for you it's 1, but try and read multiple books, and that also helps with generating good ideas, mixing the ideas. Number 6, don't be afraid to pause a book and return to it later. I've had books where I read them maybe in 2015 or something like that, 2016, and then I'll come back like 10 years later and read it again or finish it, or read a little bit each year. That's okay too. There is no right or wrong way of doing it. another thing I'll also add is don't be afraid to reread books. Some books I've read like 5, 6, 7 times because they're that good. So don't be afraid to reread books, because oftentimes the book changes as you change as a person. Number 7, read during your downtime. If you're in line, you're waiting for something, waiting for your coffee or whatever, or you're on the toilet, perfect time to read, right? Just open up Kindle or a book that you keep in your pocket and just read. Number 8, follow your curiosity. This one's very important. Whenever you're interested in a subject, start reading on that subject, right? And that's the easiest way to read. If you all of a sudden start getting into finance, start reading finance books. If you start getting into mathematics, start reading mathematics. If you start getting into AI, start reading AI. And this is a good habit. What you'll find is at some point you'll probably get bored of the stuff you've been reading. Like I've read so many reality creation, Neville Goddard type stuff, like maybe 50 or 60 or 70 manifestation type books, that I got bored of that at some point. And I moved on back to technology, back to more left brain type books. So that's why I say start with something that you enjoy. You eventually start reading everything out of sheer boredom when you start getting those numbers in. Number 9, have a reading buddy. It's important to have someone that you can share these ideas with, someone that you can shoot the shit with, that you can explain these concepts to, because they say when you teach someone, you better integrate those lessons, because it really challenges you to see if you know what you're talking about when you're teaching someone. That's actually a large reason I do these videos, is to really distill these ideas, to share them with people, but also to distill them for myself and reinforce these lessons that I've read. And number 10, set a reading goal. I used to do this at the beginning, not so much now. I'll set a reading goal of like 20 books in a year, or 30 or 40 or 50 or 100 or whatever. The most I ended up doing was like 111 a few years back. I did a video on that, which was crazy. But these days I kind of do around 50 to 70 range without really trying. That's where I find myself. But during the initial stages, it is fun to kind of set a goal for yourself and just go for it. Anyway, that's the video. Hopefully this has sold you on the idea of reading. I actually made a video 10 years ago trying to encourage people to read, but it was quite basic, and it will be interesting to compare that video to this one. I don't know why, but this can save your ass so much time. It's unbelievable. Think about the 80-20 principle, guys. So with audiobooks, what you want to do is you want to get a whole bunch of different audiobooks on the certain target you're trying to do this particular month. Let's say this month I'm trying to hit my fitness goals, to see how these ideas are articulated and communicated after 10 years of reading 600 books. And it will be also interesting to see what the next 10 years look like. So I encourage you to start reading. Don't get left behind this age of AI. We're soon going to have people just with like one computer, a bunch of AI agents, creating billion-dollar companies, because we're living in the age of leverage. So this is a tipping point. This is your chance to get ahead of the trend, to become something superhuman, or to be eating the bugs with everybody else. Take care.